The woman at lane 7 had been there for 3 hours, and nobody had said a word to her. That was unusual at Coronado Naval Base. SEALs were not known for silence around civilians, especially not around women who looked like they had wandered in from a coffee shop in La Jolla. But something about the way she moved, the way she loaded, the way she breathed between shots, had created a bubble of quiet around her that even the loudest operators respected. What none of them knew was that the rifle in her hands had last been fired in the Hindu Kush Mountains, in an operation that never happened, by a woman who officially never existed. Reese Callahan adjusted her ear protection and chambered another round with movements so economical they barely registered as motion. The target downrange sat at 800 meters, a distance most recreational shooters never attempted. She exhaled half a breath, let her heartbeat settle into the space between seconds, and pressed the trigger with the same pressure she might use to touch a sleeping child's forehead. The round punched through the 10 ring with surgical precision. Behind her, a young Marine corporal stopped mid-step on his way to his own lane. His eyes tracked from the target monitor back to the small woman in jeans and a faded gray hoodie. He said nothing, but his trajectory changed. Instead of continuing to lane 12, he drifted closer to lane 7, drawn by something he could not quite name. Reese felt his attention like heat on her skin, but gave no indication she noticed. She had learned long ago that acknowledgement invited conversation, and conversation invited questions she could not answer. So she simply reached for another magazine, her hands moving with the unconscious grace of someone who had performed this action 10,000 times in circumstances far more dire than a sunny California afternoon. 50 yards away, Master Chief Wade Garrett lowered his binoculars and turned to his swim buddy. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" His voice carried the rough texture of 35 years spent shouting over helicopter rotors and ocean waves. Senior Chief Lorne Briggs nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the woman at lane 7. "That's not recreational shooting." "No," Garrett agreed, his jaw tight. "That's something else entirely." He studied the woman with the intensity he usually reserved for threat assessment. Small frame, maybe 5'4", civilian clothes that hung loose enough to hide her build. Nothing about her screamed operator, but nothing about her screamed civilian either. She existed in some undefined space between, and that bothered him more than he wanted to admit. "Who brings a custom rifle to a Navy range for fun?" Briggs muttered. Garrett's jaw tightened. At 58 years old, he had spent more time on this range than most SEALs spent in the teams. He knew every shooter, every weapon, every sound. This woman was an anomaly, and anomalies on a secure military facility were either assets or threats. He started walking toward lane 7, his stride carrying the authority of someone who had spent 4 decades earning every stripe on his sleeve. The Marine corporal cleared his throat. "Excuse me, ma'am?" Reese looked up, her face carefully neutral. The kid couldn't have been more than 22, all squared shoulders and fresh motivation. His rifle hung across his chest at a slightly awkward angle, the mark of someone still getting used to carrying a weapon as an extension of themselves. "Yes," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "I don't mean to bother you, but my rifle's been pulling left all morning." The corporal's frustration bled through his carefully maintained military bearing. "The armorer checked it twice, said it was fine, but I know what I'm seeing. My qualification is in 2 days, and I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong." Reese studied him for a moment. She saw the slight tension in his left shoulder, the way his grip strangled the weapon just a fraction too tight. She saw 100 other Marines just like him, from another life, another version of herself who had been allowed to help. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to his rifle. The Marine's eyebrows climbed toward his cover, but he handed over the weapon with visible hesitation. Reese settled the rifle against her shoulder, immediately feeling the imbalance he had created with his grip. Her hands adjusted the position by millimeters, showing him without words where the tension lived. Then she raised the weapon, her body falling into a stance that was textbook perfect, but somehow uniquely her own. "You're fighting the rifle," she said softly. "It wants to settle here." She shifted the stock slightly against her shoulder. "You're forcing it here. Let it rest where it wants to rest." The Marine watched with the intensity of someone glimpsing something beyond his current understanding. Like, don't muscle it? Exactly. The rifle knows where it wants to be. Your job is to let it get there, then become still enough that you and the weapon are the same thing. She handed it back to him, her movements careful. "Try it." Corporal Tyler Nash took his rifle back like it was made of something precious. He moved to his lane, adjusted his stance the way she had shown him, and sent a round downrange. The shot hit dead center. "Holy hell," Nash breathed. He turned back to Reese with something like reverence in his eyes. "Ma'am, how did you see that? I've had 3 different instructors try to fix my pull, and you just looked at me for like 10 seconds and knew exactly what it was." Reese felt the old instinct rise in her chest, the desire to teach, to share what she knew with someone hungry to learn. But that path led to questions about where she had learned, who had trained her, why her knowledge carried the weight of hard-earned experience rather than casual hobby. So instead, she just smiled, a small thing that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Spend some time around rifles. Good luck on your qualification." Nash looked he wanted to ask more, but something in Reese's posture had shifted, a door quietly closing. He nodded, his gratitude obvious even in his retreat. "Thank you, ma'am. Seriously." Reese watched him return to his lane, already shooting better, his confidence rebuilt by a 60-second intervention. She felt the familiar ache of satisfaction mixed with loss. There had been a time when teaching young warriors was her purpose, when she had been trusted with the most dangerous students America could produce. Now she hid in plain sight, helping when she could, vanishing before anyone looked too closely. She turned back to her own lane, reaching for her rifle. The familiar weight settled into her hands like coming home to a place that no longer existed. She was lining up her next shot when she felt the shift in atmosphere behind her. The conversation among the SEALs at the far end of the range had stopped. Reese didn't need to turn around to know they were watching. Nash's reaction had been too visible, his gratitude too obvious. In a community of warriors who prided themselves on expertise, someone casually fixing what 3 instructors couldn't would draw attention like blood in water. She forced herself to remain calm, to not alter her routine. Changing behavior now would only confirm whatever suspicions were forming. So she simply continued her pattern. Load, breathe, aim, fire. Each shot a perfect echo of the last. Each impact exactly where she intended. 400 meters, 450, 500. The groupings never wavered. At the far end of the range, Master Chief Garrett lowered his binoculars again. "That Marine," Briggs said quietly, "he just went from barely qualified to expert marksman in 60 seconds." Garrett said nothing. His eyes tracked the woman's every movement, cataloging details his conscious mind hadn't yet processed. The way she moved between shots, no wasted motion, no hesitation. The way her breathing pattern never changed, even as she adjusted for distance and wind. The way her hands touched the weapon like it was an extension of her nervous system. This wasn't good instruction. This was operational experience, forged in environments where mistakes meant death. "Who is she?" Garrett asked, though he knew Briggs wouldn't have an answer. "Signed in as Reese Callahan, civilian, public access authorization through the Navy Exchange Program. Background? Clean on paper. Too clean, actually, like someone scrubbed it." Garrett's instincts, honed through 4 decades of combat and covert operations, were screaming. This woman was either the best recreational shooter he'd ever seen, or she was something else entirely. And in his experience, anomalies on secure military facilities were rarely coincidences. He started walking toward Lane 7. The sound reached Reese before she saw them, the rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors approaching from the north. Blackhawks. Her mind registered automatically, 2 of them flying in formation. The world tilted sideways for half a second. Suddenly, Reese wasn't standing on a sunny California range, but crouched in darkness. The same helicopter sound overhead. The smell of cordite and blood thick in her throat. Fire blooming orange against a black sky. Men screaming. The terrible grinding sound of metal tearing apart. Her hands wanted to shake. She forced them still through sheer willpower. But not before her breathing hitched. Not before her eyes went distant with the 1,000-yard stare every combat veteran recognized. The helicopters passed overhead, their sound fading toward the Pacific. Reese's breathing slowly returned to normal, but she knew the damage was done. Someone had seen. Someone always saw. "You good, ma'am?" The voice came from behind her, deep, authoritative, carrying the weight of command. Reese turned slowly. Master Chief Wade Garrett stood 2 meters away, close enough to assert authority, far enough to maintain tactical courtesy. He wore desert camouflage utilities and an expression that could have been carved from granite. His arms were crossed over a chest that spoke of thousands of hours in the weight room. The gold trident insignia above his left pocket caught the afternoon light. Chief Petty Officer, Reese noted from his collar device. Senior enough to carry weight, experienced enough to recognize what he just witnessed. "Fine," Reese managed, hating how tight her voice sounded. "Just not a fan of helicopters." Garrett's eyes, gray, sharp, missing nothing, studied her face. "Interesting. Most civilians I know don't have physiological stress responses to standard helicopter traffic." "I didn't say I was traumatized, Chief. I said I wasn't a fan. There's a difference." "Is there?" Garrett took a step closer. "Because from where I'm standing, you just had a reaction that looked an awful lot like what I see in guys from deployment." The conversation had gone somewhere Reese couldn't afford to let it go. She turned back to her rifle, beginning the process of breaking it down for cleaning. "I think we're done here, Chief. I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. Just here to shoot, same as everyone else." "That's the thing, ma'am. You're not shooting same as everyone else." Garrett's voice had gone quiet, dangerous. "That Marine you just helped? I've been trying to fix his pull for 3 weeks. You diagnosed it in 10 seconds. That's not hobby shooting. That's professional-level instruction." Reese's hands paused fractionally in their work. When she looked up at Garrett, her expression had gone completely neutral. The kind of neutral that was itself a tell for anyone trained to read people. "Where did you train?" Garrett asked. The question wasn't hostile, just direct. That's not self-taught shooting. That's not even competitive shooter level. You're putting rounds through the same hole at 800 meters with consistency that most of my guys can't match. Reese had prepared for this question, had rehearsed her answer until it sounded natural. "I grew up around firearms, had some good instruction over the years. I enjoy the challenge of long-range work." "Good instruction," Garrett repeated, his tone making the words sound insufficient. "Ma'am, I've been doing this for 35 years. I know what good instruction looks like. What you just demonstrated isn't good instruction. That's elite-level capability. I appreciate the compliment, Chief, but I think you might be overstating things." Reese kept her expression friendly but distant. "I just practice a lot." Garrett opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. Something in his eyes shifted, not suspicion exactly, but calculation. He'd seen enough interrogations to know when someone was deflecting, and this woman was a master at it. "You have proper authorization to use this facility?" he asked. "Public access program, properly registered. Everything's legal." "I'm not questioning your paperwork, ma'am. I'm questioning why someone with your skill level is shooting on a SEAL training facility instead of, say, a civilian range where you wouldn't attract attention." The question landed like a punch. Reese felt it in her chest, the careful excavation of her motivations. Because he was right, of course. Someone truly trying to stay hidden wouldn't come to Coronado. They'd find some quiet range in the desert, somewhere without operators who'd recognize advanced capability. But Reese had come here for the same reason a pianist might sneak into Carnegie Hall at night to touch the keys. This was the closest thing to home she had left. "This is a well-maintained range with excellent safety protocols," she said carefully. "Same reason anyone would be here." Garrett stared at her for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Fair enough, ma'am. But let me be clear. This range is where we train the most elite warriors in the United States military. We don't take kindly to people playing dress-up and pretending to be something they're not." The word stung more than Reese wanted to admit. Playing dress-up. As if the years she'd spent in the shadows, the missions she'd completed, the friends she'd lost, as if all of that was some kind of costume she could take off. "I'm not here for photos, Chief," Reese said, her voice colder than she intended. "I'm here because this is a good range, nothing more." "Right," Garrett said, not sounding convinced at all. "Well, enjoy your shooting, ma'am. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other." He walked away, his posture radiating skepticism and territorial authority. Reese watched him go, then returned to her rifle maintenance with hands that wanted to shake, but didn't. She had been careful. She had been so careful, but apparently not careful enough. Across the range, Senior Chief Briggs rejoined Garrett. "Well," Garrett shook his head, "something's not right about her. The shooting's too good, the rifle's too expensive, and she just about came apart when those helicopters flew over." "PTSD?" Briggs suggested. "That's what I thought," Garrett agreed. "But civilians don't usually develop helicopter-specific combat trauma. That's a very particular kind of stress response." "So what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Garrett said slowly, "that maybe our mysterious civilian has some military background she's not advertising. Maybe contractor work overseas. Maybe something else. But nobody shoots like that without serious professional training." "You want me to run her name?" Garrett considered it, then shook his head. "Not yet. Let me watch her a bit more first. If she's retired military or former contract, she has every right to be here. But if she's lying about her background, trying to get close to SEAL operations for some reason, that's a different problem entirely." They both looked back at Lane 7, where Reese had finished cleaning her rifle and was packing it into its case with the same precise movements she used for everything else. She never looked in their direction, but somehow both men had the distinct impression she knew exactly where they were and what they were discussing. "That woman has situational awareness like I've never seen in a civilian," Briggs muttered. "Yeah," Garrett agreed, his voice troubled. "That's because I don't think she is one." Reese drove home that afternoon knowing she had made a mistake. Not in how she shot, that was muscle memory, impossible to hide when she was on the range. The mistake was coming back. The mistake was thinking she could exist in this world, even at its edges, without eventually being noticed. She should have left after the first day, should have recognized that Coronado was too close to what she used to be, too full of people trained to spot the same things she'd been trained to spot. But she hadn't left. And now Chief Garrett was asking questions she couldn't answer, watching her with eyes that had seen too much to be easily deceived. Her phone buzzed as she pulled into her apartment parking lot in National City. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the accept button. "Reese Callahan," she said. The voice on the other end was professional, measured, and immediately identifiable as military. "Miss Callahan, this is Captain Mitchell Thorne, SEAL Team 7. I was hoping you might have some time to talk this afternoon." Reese's pulse quickened. A captain. Garrett had escalated quickly. "About what, sir?" "About your rather impressive demonstration at the range this morning. Word travels fast in the teams, Miss Callahan, especially when a civilian outshoots a SEAL qualification standard by margins that, frankly, shouldn't be possible." "With respect, Captain, I don't think I did anything wrong. I have proper authorization to use the facility, and I followed all range safety protocols." "You misunderstand, Miss Callahan." Thorne's voice carried a hint of something that might have been amusement. "You're not in trouble. I'm just curious. And when I get curious, I tend to make phone calls. Reese felt ice forming in her chest. What kind of phone calls? I reached out to some contacts of mine, JSOC, SOCOM, even a friend at the Special Operations Command. Thorne paused. Interesting thing happened. Every single inquiry came back with the same response. Polite non-answers. The kind of non-answers that tell me I'm asking about something classified above my pay grade. Reese said nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't make things worse. The kind of non-answers, Thorne continued, that come with polite suggestions to stop asking questions. Which tells me you're not just some civilian hobbyist, Miss Callahan. You have training that even most of my guys don't have. And whatever you did, whoever you did it for, is buried deep enough that even a SEAL team commander can't get confirmation. What do you want, Captain? Reese asked quietly. I want to understand who's shooting on my facility, not because I want to expose you or cause you problems, but because I need to know. If you were one of ours, if you served in the shadows doing the things most people will never know about, then you deserve respect, not harassment. But I need to know the truth. Reese closed her eyes, leaning her head back against the car's seat. She had kept this secret for 3 years, had built a new life on the foundation of anonymity and denial. But Thorne was right. The non-answers he'd received were as good as confirmation. Someone at JSOC had recognized her name, had seen the flags in her file, and had quietly shut down his inquiry, which meant they knew exactly who she was and what she had done. I can't tell you what you want to know, Reese said finally. I legally cannot tell you, but I will say this. I'm not a threat to anyone at Coronado. I'm just someone trying to live a quiet life after doing a job that doesn't officially exist. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Thorne spoke, and there was something like respect in his voice. That's good enough for me, Miss Callahan. I'll make sure Chief Garrett backs off. He's a good SEAL, but he can be territorial. He doesn't need to know your background to leave you in peace. Thank you, sir, Reese said, surprised by the relief flooding through her. Miss Callahan, one more thing. Thorne's voice softened slightly. If you ever want to talk, operator to operator, my door is open. I imagine it gets lonely carrying those memories alone. The unexpected kindness hit Reese harder than any interrogation could have. Her throat tightened. I appreciate that, Captain. She ended the call and sat in her car for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Thorne had figured out enough, or at least figured out that there was something to figure out. And instead of pushing for answers he knew she couldn't give, he'd offered solidarity, understanding, the recognition that she was one of them, even if the official record would never reflect it. It was more than she'd gotten from the government that had trained her, used her, and then erased her. Reese returned to the range 4 days later, hoping enough time had passed for Garrett's suspicions to cool. She arrived early, before the morning training blocks began, when the facility was quieter and the likelihood of confrontation lower. The fog still hung thick over Coronado, turning the world soft and gray. She had just finished setting up at Lane 7 when she heard voices approaching. Multiple voices. Her stomach sank even before she turned around. Master Chief Garrett stood at the entrance to the covered firing line, flanked by 6 other SEALs in various stages of their morning workout gear. All of them were watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. This wasn't a coincidence. This was orchestrated. "Morning, ma'am," Garrett called out, his voice carrying the false friendliness of someone about to make a point. "Glad to see you back. The guys and I were talking about you." Reese straightened from her rifle case, keeping her face neutral. "Is that right?" "Oh, yeah." Garrett continued walking closer, the other SEALs spreading out in a loose semicircle. "See, I was telling them about the shooting I saw you do last week. Really impressive stuff. World-class even. And you know what they said?" Reese waited, knowing whatever came next was designed to put her on the defensive. "They said I must be exaggerating," Garrett spread his hands, "because nobody shoots that well without serious professional training. And you told me yourself you were just a hobbyist who practices a lot. So now I've got a credibility problem. One of the SEALs behind him, a muscular lieutenant with a cocky grin, chimed in. The chief here has been known to oversell things. Remember that bar in Tijuana, Chief? You said it had the best tacos in Mexico. Gave me food poisoning for 3 days. The other operators laughed, but their eyes never left Reese. This was theater, and she was the unwilling star. So here's what I was thinking, Garrett said, his tone shifting to something harder. How about a friendly demonstration? You show the guys what you can do, prove I wasn't exaggerating, and we can all go about our morning. Sound fair? Reese felt the trap closing around her. If she refused, she looked like a fraud, confirming Garrett's suspicion that she'd been overstating her abilities. If she accepted and performed poorly, same result. But if she accepted and shot the way she actually could, she would only deepen the mystery around her background, invite more questions she couldn't answer. The smart play was to refuse. Pack up her gear, leave with dignity, find another range somewhere else in San Diego County. But as she looked at Garrett's smug expression, at the way he'd brought an audience specifically to humiliate her, something hard and stubborn rose in her chest. She had spent 3 years hiding, 3 years diminishing herself, pretending to be less than she was, swallowing the knowledge that she had served her country in ways these men would never know. And she was tired, bone tired of being dismissed, of being underestimated, of pretending that the skills she'd earned through blood and sacrifice were somehow shameful secrets. What did you have in mind? Reese asked quietly. Garrett's smile widened. Nothing crazy, standard SEAL sniper qualification course. 600 meters, 10 rounds, time limit of 2 minutes. You game? Reese did a quick calculation. Standard SEAL qualification required hitting a man-sized target at 600 meters with at least 7 of 10 rounds. For qualified SEAL snipers, it was challenging but achievable. For a supposed civilian hobbyist, it should be nearly impossible. Garrett was betting she would fail publicly and definitively. What happens if I pass? Reese asked. Garrett laughed, a sound without humor. If you pass, I'll personally apologize for doubting you and never question your presence on this range again. He paused. But when you fail, you agree to stop coming here. Find a different facility for your hobby shooting. Reese should have walked away. Every instinct trained into her over a decade of classified operations screamed that this was bad tactics, that exposing her capabilities served no strategic purpose. But another part of her, the part that had been forced to disappear, that had been erased from official records and denied recognition for her service, wanted desperately to be seen. Deal, Reese said. The SEALs stirred with interest. Apparently, they'd expected her to back down. Garrett's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise before settling back into confidence. Lane 12, standard SEAL target configuration. Briggs, get the timer ready. Reese picked up her rifle and walked to lane 12, aware of 7 sets of eyes tracking her every movement. The fog was starting to burn off, revealing the target array downrange. At 600 meters, the silhouette targets looked impossibly small, barely visible in the morning light. She settled into position, feeling her body shift into the familiar geometry of precision shooting. Her breathing slowed automatically. Her heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to the space between her position and the target, everything else fading into irrelevance. This was the state she had lived in for years, the place where she was most herself, most alive. It felt like coming home after a long exile. 2 minutes on my mark, Briggs called out. 3, 2, 1, mark. Reese's first shot broke before the word mark had fully left his mouth. The target monitor showed an immediate center mass hit. She cycled the bolt, acquired, fired. Another hit. The rhythm took over, her body moving through the sequence with the automaticity of perfect training. 10 rounds in 43 seconds, 10 center mass hits. The silence behind her was profound. Reese engaged the safety, cleared her weapon, and stood up. Only then did she turn to face the SEALs. Garrett stared at the target monitor like it had personally offended him. His jaw worked soundlessly for a moment before he managed to speak. "That's not possible." The cocky lieutenant was no longer smiling. "Chief, that was faster than your qualification time." "It was faster than anyone's qualification time," another SEAL muttered. "I've never seen anyone shoot a qual course that fast and not miss a single shot." Reese shouldered her rifle, meeting Garrett's eyes directly. "I believe you said something about an apology, Chief." Garrett's face had gone red. He took a step toward Reese, his hands clenched at his sides. "Who the hell are you really? And don't give me that hobbyist line again. Nobody, and I mean nobody, shoots like that without professional military training. Advanced professional military training." "I'm someone who knows how to shoot," Reese said calmly. "That's all you need to know." "That's not all I need to know," Garrett shot back. "This is a secure military facility. You want to keep shooting here? You need to explain where you learned to shoot like a Tier 1 operator." Reese felt her control starting to slip. "I don't owe you an explanation, Chief. I have proper authorization to use this facility. I demonstrated the skill you challenged me to demonstrate. Our deal was that if I passed, you'd leave me alone. So leave me alone." The other SEALs were watching the exchange like spectators at a tennis match. The lieutenant stepped forward, his expression more curious than hostile. "Ma'am, I think what the chief is trying to say, in his tactful way, is that we've all been doing this for a very long time. We know what elite shooting looks like. And what you just did wasn't just elite. That was something else entirely." Reese's hands tightened on her rifle. "I appreciate the compliment, but I really just want to finish my range time." Garrett's eyes narrowed. "You're hiding something. I don't know what, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, if you're lying about who you are or why you're really here, there will be consequences." "Is that a threat, Chief?" "It's a promise." They stood there, locked in silent confrontation, neither willing to back down. The morning sun had burned through the fog now, casting long shadows across the range. Finally, Garrett turned to his men. "Training block starts in 15. Get your gear staged." The SEALs dispersed, though Reese could feel their eyes on her as they moved to their assigned lanes. Garrett lingered for one more moment. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Whatever you're hiding, whoever you really are, I will find out. Good luck with that, Chief." He walked away, and Reese was left standing alone at lane 12, her heart pounding, her hands finally starting to shake now that the confrontation was over. She had just made a catastrophic mistake. She'd let pride override operational security. She'd exposed capabilities that should have remained hidden. And now she'd made an enemy of a man who had the resources and the stubbornness to dig until he found answers. Reese packed up her gear and headed for the parking lot. She was halfway to her car when her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She answered without thinking. "Callahan." The voice on the other end made her blood run cold. "Miss Callahan, this is General Clayton Murdoch. I believe we need to talk about your recent activities at Coronado." Reese stopped walking. General Murdoch, the architect of the program that had trained her, the man who had personally told her she no longer existed. "I have nothing to say to you, General." "Oh, I think you do, especially since you just demonstrated classified capabilities in front of 7 SEAL team operators. Capabilities that, according to your official record, you don't possess. Because according to your official record, Miss Callahan, you were never part of any special operations program at all." "What do you want?" "I want you to stop drawing attention to yourself. Stop teaching. Stop shooting. Stop reminding people that women like you exist." Murdoch's voice was cold, clinical. "Or I'll be forced to remind you why we made you disappear in the first place." The line went dead. Reese stood in the parking lot, the Southern California sun warm on her face, and felt the full weight of her situation settle over her like a shroud. She had thought the worst thing that could happen was being discovered. But she'd been wrong. The worst thing was being remembered. 2 weeks after his conversation with Reese, Master Chief Wade Garrett stood at lane 7, watching a transformation he still couldn't quite believe. The woman who'd been a mystery just days ago was now teaching 6 SEALs advanced wind-reading techniques with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Petty Officer Deacon Rhodes, who 2 weeks ago couldn't hit consistently past 600 meters, had just put 3 rounds through the same hole at 950. How? Rhodes breathed, staring at his grouping like it belonged to someone else. You stopped fighting the wind, Reese said simply. Started working with it. That's all it takes. Letting go of control and trusting the process. Garrett watched the exchange and felt something he hadn't expected. Pride. Not in his own students, though they were improving at rates that defied explanation. Pride in her, in the teacher she'd become, even after everything had tried to break her. She's something else, Senior Chief Briggs said, appearing beside him. Yeah, Garrett agreed. Cole was right about her. The morning training sessions had become a fixture. 3 times a week, Reese would arrive before dawn and work with small groups of SEALs. She taught them techniques that weren't in any manual. How to read terrain like a language. How to become still enough that your heartbeat didn't move the rifle. How to shoot in conditions that would make most operators pack up and go home. And the results were undeniable. Rhodes had improved his effective range by 300 meters. Briggs could now compensate for wind patterns he'd never even noticed before. Even Garrett, with 35 years of experience, found himself learning things that made him reconsider everything he thought he knew about precision shooting. Words spread through the SEAL community like wildfire. Operators from Team 3 started showing up, standing at the back of the range just to watch. A Marine Scout sniper from Pendleton drove down twice to observe her sessions. A Ranger instructor from Fort Benning sent an email asking if she'd consider consulting for their sniper school. The notes started arriving in Reese's locker, handwritten messages from operators she'd helped. Made my first real-world shot at 1,150 meters in Kandahar. Your training saved my life. Thank you. P.O.2 Marcus Dean. Qualified expert for the first time in 8 years. My platoon chief asked what changed. I told him a ghost taught me how to shoot. Sergeant Brian Torres. Reese kept every one in a small box in her truck. Each note was a reminder that this mattered, that the knowledge she'd almost taken to her grave was saving lives. But success drew attention, and attention was exactly what General Murdoch had warned her against. Captain Thorne noticed it first. Senior officers asking questions during their morning coffee. Who is this civilian everyone's talking about? Where did she come from? Should we be concerned about operational security? Thorne deflected as best he could, but he knew it was only a matter of time before someone with enough rank and curiosity started digging deeper. That someone arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of Rear Admiral Elliot Bancroft. Garrett was working with Reese on extreme distance shooting when Thorne appeared at the range entrance with the Admiral in tow. Bancroft was 64, a Desert Storm veteran with steel-gray hair and the kind of presence that made even senior officers stand a little straighter. Master Chief, Bancroft said, his voice carrying the authority of 4 decades in uniform. This is the civilian contractor Captain Thorne's been telling me about? Garrett came to attention. Yes, sir. Miss Reese Callahan. Reese turned from her rifle setup, and Garrett watched her posture shift subtly. Not quite military bearing, but something that suggested she knew exactly how to navigate this kind of encounter. Admiral, she said, extending her hand. Bancroft shook it, studying her face. Captain Thorne tells me you've improved our sniper capability more in 8 weeks than we've managed in the last decade. That's quite a claim. The captain is being generous, sir. I'm just sharing some techniques that work for me. Techniques, Bancroft repeated. Mind if I watch? For the next hour, Reese demonstrated her methods with Rhodes and 2 other SEALs. She showed them how to read microclimates in wind patterns, how to use natural sounds to gauge distance, how to shoot in twilight when depth perception collapsed. Bancroft watched in silence, his expression unreadable. When the session ended, he gestured for Reese and Thorne to follow him to Thorne's office. Inside, Bancroft settled into a chair and fixed Reese with a direct stare. "Miss Callahan, I'm going to be frank. What I just witnessed represents a level of instruction I haven't seen outside of classified programs. The kind of programs that don't exist on paper." Reese's face remained carefully neutral. "Sir, Bancroft held up a hand. "I'm not asking you to violate any agreements you might have signed. I'm simply acknowledging reality. You have knowledge and skills that our people desperately need. The question is whether we can formalize your presence here in a way that benefits everyone." He pulled a folder from his briefcase. "I'm prepared to offer you an official civilian contractor position. Full facility access, appropriate security clearance, salary commensurate with your expertise. You'd report directly to me with authority to design and implement training programs as you see fit." Reese glanced at Thorne, who gave a slight nod of encouragement. "There would be conditions," Bancroft continued. "No public recognition, no official record of your service history. You'd be listed simply as a contractor with specialized skills. Your past stays classified, but your future, that can make a real difference." Reese felt something loosen in her chest. This was what she'd wanted without knowing how to ask for it. Recognition without exposure, purpose without danger. "I have some requirements of my own," she said quietly. "I'm listening. Full autonomy over curriculum and methods. No interference from traditional instructors who think they know better. The ability to reject students who aren't ready. I won't waste time on people who aren't committed to learning. And one more thing." She leaned forward slightly. "Credit for my students' successes goes to them, not to me. No publicity, no articles about the mysterious civilian instructor. They earn their achievements. I'm just a guide." Bancroft smiled for the first time. "That might be the most operator thing I've ever heard. You have a deal, Miss Callahan." They shook hands and Reese felt something shift inside her. For the first time since the program ended, she had a role that fit. Not her old life, but something new, built on the foundation of what she'd learned and survived. "There's one more requirement," Bancroft said. 2 weeks from now, I need you to do a formal demonstration for senior leadership. Show them what you've been teaching and why it matters. Can you do that?" Reese's stomach tightened. A formal demonstration meant more eyes, more questions, more risk of exposure. But it also meant legitimacy, support from the brass that could protect her from people like Murdoch. How formal are we talking? 20 to 30 flag officers, controlled environment. You demonstrate advanced techniques and explain the methodology behind them. Nothing you're not comfortable with. Bancroft paused. "I know you prefer to stay out of the spotlight, but this would help justify the resources we're allocating to your program." Reese looked at Thorne, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." "Excellent," Bancroft said, standing. "We'll handle all the logistics. You just focus on showing them what makes your method special." After the Admiral left, Reese remained in Thorne's office, her mind racing. "You made the right call," Thorne said. "Bancroft's support will give you protection you wouldn't have otherwise." "Or it'll paint a bigger target on my back," Reese replied. She didn't know how right she was. That evening, as Reese was packing up her gear to leave Coronado, a figure stepped out of the shadows near the parking lot. General Clayton Murdoch looked exactly as she remembered. Cold eyes, perfect posture, the bearing of someone who'd spent decades making decisions that cost other people their lives. "Miss Callahan," he said, "we need to talk." Reese's hands tightened on her rifle case. "I have nothing to say to you, General." "Really? Not even about your new contractor position? Your upcoming demonstration for Admiral Bancroft?" Murdoch's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You've been busy making yourself visible. That's unfortunate. I have proper authorization that I can make disappear with a single phone call." Murdoch took a step closer. "You were supposed to stay invisible, Reese. That was the agreement. You get a new identity, a clean slate, and in return, you vanish. No teaching, no demonstrations, no reminding people that programs like ours ever existed." Why do you care? Reese demanded. The program ended 4 years ago. I'm not exposing anything classified. Because you're not the only ghost, Reese. There are other programs, smaller, deeper, more sensitive than yours ever was. And if people start asking questions about you, they'll eventually ask questions about them. Murdoch's voice dropped to something dangerous. I can't allow that. So what do you want? I want you to decline Bancroft's offer. Stop teaching. Disappear again. He paused. Because if you don't, I'll be forced to remind you why we made you disappear in the first place. Congressional inquiry. Senate Armed Services Committee. They're already sniffing around classified special operations programs. It wouldn't take much to ensure you're subpoenaed, forced to testify under oath about operations that are still active. Reese felt ice spreading through her chest. You'd expose active operations just to shut me up? I'd expose you, Reese, your operations, your team, every mission you ran from 2017 to 2021. And once that door opens, there's no closing it. Operators currently in the field would be compromised, missions would fail, people would die. He smiled coldly. All because you wanted to play instructor at Coronado. That's not fair. Fair doesn't matter. Operational security matters. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Bancroft you've reconsidered. Personal reasons, family emergency, whatever story sells. Then you're going to pack up and leave San Diego. Find a quiet life somewhere else. And if you're smart, you'll stay disappeared this time. And if I don't? Then in 4 weeks, you'll be sitting in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee under oath with cameras recording every word. Refuse to answer, you go to prison for contempt. Answer truthfully, you expose classified programs and probably go to prison for that too. Your choice. Murdoch turned to leave, then paused. You know what your problem is, Reese? You think your service matters more than operational security. That's always been your weakness. Some secrets need to stay buried, even if it means people like you never get the recognition you think you deserve. He walked away, leaving Reese standing alone in the parking lot as the sun set over the Pacific. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congressional hearing scheduled for 4 weeks from today. Subpoena being issued tomorrow. You have until then to make the smart choice. CM. Reese sat in her truck for a long time, Murdoch's threat echoing in her mind. 4 weeks. She had 4 weeks before everything she'd built came crashing down. Unless she ran. Again. The next morning, Reese arrived at the range to find Garrett waiting for her at Lane 7. You look like hell, he said without preamble. Didn't sleep much. Want to talk about it? Reese almost said no, had spent 3 years keeping secrets, protecting herself by trusting no one. But looking at Garrett, this man who'd lost his son to a mission she'd led, who'd every reason to hate her, but had instead become her ally, she realized that maybe she didn't have to carry this alone. Can we go somewhere private? 20 minutes later, they were sitting in Garrett's truck overlooking the ocean, and Reese was telling him everything. About Murdoch's threat, about the congressional hearing, about the impossible choice between running again or facing a tribunal that could expose active operations and send her to prison. Garrett listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised her. Do the demonstration. Wade, didn't you hear what I just said? Murdoch will... Screw Murdoch, Garrett interrupted. He's running scared because he knows that if your program gets scrutinized, his will too, which means he's vulnerable. You do that demonstration, you show Bancroft and 30 other flag officers exactly what you're capable of, and you'll have support that Murdoch can't touch. Or I'll just confirm everything he's accused me of, being too visible, too dangerous to leave alone. Then be dangerous, Garrett said. You've spent 3 years hiding, 3 years pretending to be less than you are. Where has that gotten you? You're still looking over your shoulder, still waiting for someone to discover who you really are. He turned to face her directly. Cole didn't die so you could spend the rest of your life hiding, Reese. He died so the mission could succeed, so people could live. Honor that by refusing to disappear. The congressional hearing, we'll deal with that when it comes, but right now you have a chance to prove your value to people who can protect you. Don't waste it because some general is playing politics. Reese wanted to argue, to point out all the ways this could go wrong. But Garrett's words had struck something deep inside her, the part that was tired of running, tired of diminishing herself, tired of pretending that her service didn't matter. Okay, she said, no more holding back. No more holding back, Garrett agreed. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Reese worked with Garrett every evening, designing a demonstration that would showcase her methods without revealing classified specifics. They practiced at different distances, in different conditions, building a presentation that was both impressive and controlled. But control was becoming harder to maintain. 4 days before the scheduled demonstration, a new complication arrived in the form of Lieutenant Bryn Mackenzie. Reese was alone at the range, running through her demonstration sequence one final time when she noticed a woman in Navy utilities watching from the observation area. Not just watching, studying, with the intensity of someone who recognized what they were seeing. After Reese finished her set, the woman approached. "Miss Callahan," she said, "I'm Lieutenant Bryn Mackenzie. Can we talk somewhere private?" They ended up in an empty briefing room, and Mackenzie didn't waste time. "I know what you were," she said. "I'm what you are now. Part of the second iteration of the program. Different name, different structure, but same basic concept. Female operators for specialized missions." Reese felt her chest tighten. They continued it? In a limited capacity. 6 operators active, down from 8. Mackenzie's voice cracked slightly. "We lost Lieutenant Sarah Hale 3 months ago. Syria. She walked into an ambush because she didn't know how to read urban terrain the way you were trained to do it." Reese closed her eyes. "I'm sorry. We need help," Mackenzie said bluntly. "We're being deployed with 1/3 the training you received. We're scared, we're undermanned, and we're dying out there. I heard about what you're doing at Coronado, teaching SEALs techniques they've never seen. I came to ask if you'd train us too." "What are you asking exactly?" 2-week intensive course, 6 operators, everything you know about operating in denied areas, reading environments, surviving when everything goes wrong. Mackenzie met her eyes. "I know it's a lot to ask. I know it puts you at risk, but we need you." Reese thought about herself at 22, undertrained, terrified, sent into environments that should have killed her. Thought about all the close calls that came from inadequate preparation. "When?" she asked. "1 week after your demonstration for Admiral Bancroft. I'll clear it through my chain of command." Mackenzie paused. "But Reese, you should know. Murdoch already knows I'm here. He called me this morning, ordered me not to contact you, said if you trained us, he'd file charges." "Of course he did. So you'll do it anyway?" Reese looked at this woman, this operator who was living the life Reese had lived, facing the same dangers without the same preparation, and made her decision. "Yes, I'll train you." Mackenzie's relief was palpable. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to us." "I do," Reese said quietly, "because someone should have done it for me." After Mackenzie left, Reese sat alone in the briefing room, feeling the weight of her commitments settling over her. The demonstration in 4 days, training Mackenzie's team afterward, the congressional hearing looming 4 weeks out. Murdoch had given her an ultimatum: disappear or be destroyed. She'd chosen neither. She'd chosen to fight. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "Heard about your conversation with Lieutenant Mackenzie. You're making this so much worse for yourself. Final warning. Cancel the demonstration and walk away. You have 96 hours. CM." Reese deleted the message and went back to the range. She had work to do. The morning of the demonstration arrived with clear skies and perfect conditions. Reese stood at lane 12, checking her equipment one final time while Garrett, Briggs, and Rhodes set up the target array. The observation deck overlooking the range was filling up with senior officers, admirals, Marine colonels, Army generals, 35 of them in total, all there to watch a civilian contractor demonstrate techniques that supposedly didn't exist in any official training manual. Captain Thorne appeared beside her. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be. Just remember, you're not trying to impress them. You're showing them why the methods work. The results speak for themselves." Admiral Bancroft arrived last, accompanied by two other admirals and a Marine three-star. He caught Reese's eye and gave her an encouraging nod. "Showtime." Thorne made the introductions, keeping Reese's background deliberately vague. "Gentlemen, Miss Callahan is a civilian contractor with extensive experience in precision marksmanship. Over the past 2 months, she's been working with select members of SEAL Team 7 with remarkable results. Today, she'll demonstrate some of the techniques she's been teaching." Reese stepped forward, feeling 35 sets of eyes on her. Her mouth was dry, but her hands were steady. "Thank you, Captain," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the range. "What I'm going to show you today isn't about flashy shooting or breaking records. It's about a fundamental shift in how we approach long-range precision work. A shift from controlling the weapon to becoming one with it." She could see skepticism on several faces. Philosophical approaches to shooting weren't what these men respected. They respected results. "I'm going to demonstrate 5 shots at varying distances and conditions," Reese continued. "After each shot, one of my students will attempt the same shot using traditional methods, then attempt it again using the techniques I've taught them. The difference will speak for itself." Admiral Bancroft nodded from the front row. "Fair enough, Miss Callahan. Show us what you've got." Shot 1, 600 meters, no complications. Reese fired, center mass. Rhodes fired with his old technique, low and left. Rhodes fired with Reese's method, center mass. Mild interest from the observation deck. Shot 2, 800 meters, 15-mile-per-hour crosswind. Reese fired. Perfect compensation. Rhodes's first attempt missed entirely. His second attempt hit outer ring. The officers leaned forward. Shot 3, 1,000 meters, elevated position. Reese studied the environment for 30 seconds, then fired. Perfect hit accounting for angle and distance. Briggs tried traditionally, 3 feet low. Briggs tried with Reese's technique, edge of target. Murmurs in the observation deck. Shot 4, 1,200 meters, obscured by atmospheric distortion. Reese took a full minute to read conditions, then fired. The round cut through heat shimmer to strike center mass. One of the generals stood up to verify the monitor. Shot 5, 1,500 meters. Reese paused, closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about Cole Garrett and the 11 others who died in the Tangi Valley. About Lieutenant Sarah Hale, killed before Reese could teach her what she needed to survive. About Mackenzie's team, waiting for training that might save their lives. She opened her eyes, settled into position, and became absolutely still. The world narrowed to breath and heartbeat, and the invisible line connecting her rifle to the distant target. She fired. The shot seemed to hang in the air forever, 2 full seconds of flight time. Reese didn't need the monitor to know where it would land. She felt it, the same way she'd felt hundreds of shots in places that didn't exist on maps. Dead center. The observation deck erupted in shocked conversation. Admiral Bancroft stood, walked to the monitor, stared at it for a long moment, then turned to look at Reese with an expression of pure astonishment. "Miss Callahan, in 32 years of military service, I have never seen shooting like that." "Thank you, Miss Callahan. Effective immediately, you're attached to Naval Special Warfare Training Command as a senior contractor. Full access, appropriate clearance, whatever resources you need, make our people better." The officers applauded, a rare display in a military setting. Reese felt relief flooding through her, but it was short-lived. Because standing in the observation deck doorway wearing civilian clothes and an expression carved from ice, was General Clayton Murdoch. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. His presence alone was a message. This isn't over. This was just beginning. 3 days after the demonstration, Reese arrived at Coronado to find the atmosphere had shifted completely. Where before she had been an outsider tolerated on the range, now SEALs nodded to her with genuine respect. Some stopped to ask questions. Others simply watched her shoot with the focus of students studying a master. Word had spread beyond just Team 7. SEALs from other teams started showing up during her training sessions, standing at the back to observe, taking mental notes on techniques they had never seen before. Official contractor status had been approved within 48 hours, a bureaucratic miracle that spoke to Admiral Bancroft's influence. Reese now had full facility access, a security clearance that made her former handlers nervous, and a salary that seemed almost obscene for doing what she loved. But the victory felt hollow, because Murdoch's appearance at the demonstration hadn't been a coincidence. It had been a declaration of war. The first strike came 72 hours after her contractor approval. Reese was working with a group of 8 SEALs on advanced wind reading when Captain Thorne appeared at the range entrance, his expression grim. "Miss Callahan, my office. Now." The walk across the base was silent. Thorne's jaw was set in a way that told Reese this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Inside his office, a copy of Defense News lay on his desk, the headline visible even from where she stood. "Unvetted civilian with classified background granted access to SEAL training." "Sir," Reese started, but Thorne held up a hand. "I know you didn't leak this, but someone did, and they included enough details to trigger a formal DoD investigation into your clearance and authorization." He picked up another document, anonymous complaint alleging you have unauthorized foreign contacts and may be selling classified tactics for personal gain. "That's insane," Reese said. "Every contact I have is domestic. Every technique I teach is knowledge you gained in a program that officially doesn't exist," Thorne finished, "which makes proving your authorization nearly impossible without exposing that program." He sat heavily in his chair. "Your interim clearance has been suspended pending review. Teaching program is halted effective immediately. You can't be on this base without an escort." Reese felt the floor drop out from under her. "How long?" "Investigation timeline is 30 to 60 days. But realistically?" Thorne met her eyes. "This is Murdoch's work. He'll drag it out as long as possible, maybe indefinitely." "My students will continue training with conventional instructors," Thorne said, and she heard the frustration in his voice. "I'm sorry, Reese. I fought this as hard as I could. Admiral Bancroft is fighting it too. But until the investigation clears you, my hands are tied." Reese walked out of Thorne's office feeling like she'd been gut-punched. 3 days. She'd had 3 days of purpose, of belonging, before Murdoch had taken it away. Garrett was waiting for her outside, leaning against his truck. One look at her face told him everything. "He shut you down," Garrett said. "It wasn't a question. Investigation into my clearance. Anonymous complaint about foreign contacts in selling secrets." Reese laughed bitterly. "All lies, but effective ones. Murdoch. Who else?" Reese leaned against the truck beside him, staring at the ocean. "I should have seen this coming. Should have known he wouldn't let me stay visible. So what are you going to do?" "I don't know. Wait for the investigation. Hope it clears me before the congressional hearing in 4 weeks." She turned to look at him. "What else can I do?" Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen, frowned, and answered. "Garrett." His expression changed as he listened, going from confusion to shock to horror. "When? Where?" A pause. "I understand. We're on our way." He ended the call and turned to Reese, his face ashen. "That was Lieutenant Mackenzie. One of her operators was captured in eastern Syria. Denied operation, completely black. She needs extraction support. Reese's blood went cold. Who? Petty Officer Quinn Reeves, 25 years old, on her third deployment. Garrett's voice was tight. She's in enemy hands, and officially, she doesn't exist. The rescue team needs intelligence, terrain, enemy disposition, extraction routes. Mackenzie said you operated in that region. The trap snapped shut with perfect precision. This was Murdoch's endgame. Force Reese to choose between saving an operator's life and proving she had classified operational knowledge. Either she helped and confirmed everything Murdoch had accused her of, or she stayed silent and let Quinn Reeves die. When do they need the intel? Reese asked. Immediately. Delta's staging a rescue, but they need someone who knows the ground. Garrett studied her face. Reese, if you do this, I know. It proves I was there, gives Murdoch everything he needs. She pushed off the truck. Decision made. Where's the briefing? JSOC, Forward Operations Center, Miramar. I'm coming with you. Wade, you don't have to. The hell I don't. You think I'm letting you walk into this alone? They drove in silence to Marine Corps Air Station, Miramar, where a nondescript building housed the Joint Special Operations Command Forward Element. Lieutenant Mackenzie met them at the entrance, her face drawn with stress. Thank you for coming, she said to Reese. I know what this costs you. Where's the rescue team? Mackenzie led them to a conference room where 6 Delta Force operators were studying satellite imagery of eastern Syria. A major looked up as they entered, his expression skeptical. You're the one with ground knowledge? He asked Reese. Deir ez-Zor region, 2018 to 2019, Reese confirmed, moving to the table. What do you have? The major pointed to the imagery. Reeves was taken here, approximately 40 kilometers northeast of the city. Intel suggests she's being held in this compound. We need to know terrain approach, enemy patrol patterns, best extraction routes. Reese studied the maps and something clicked in her mind like a key turning in a lock. She knew this area, had operated there for 8 months during a mission that officially never happened. The approach from the north is suicide, she said, pointing. Looks clear on satellite, but there's a seasonal wadi here that floods this time of year. You'll bog down and get caught in the open. How do you know that? One of the operators asked. Because I drove through it in February 2019 and nearly drowned, Reese said flatly. Approach from the west instead. There's a Kurdish checkpoint here, she tapped the map, run by a militia commander named Azad. He was friendly to American forces. If he's still there, he'll let you pass and won't report it. And if he's not, the major asked, then you bribe whoever is with American cigarettes and medical supplies. Trust me, it works. For the next hour, Reese provided detailed intelligence that could only come from someone who had operated extensively in the region. Patrol patterns, safe houses, dead zones in enemy surveillance. The exact route she'd used for 3 different extractions in 2019. The Delta operators took notes, their initial skepticism replaced by grudging respect. This is solid intelligence, the major said finally. Best we've had for this region in years. He looked at Reese with new eyes. You want to tell me how a civilian contractor knows this much about denied territory in Syria? No, Reese said, but I can tell you that if you follow that route, you'll get your operator back alive. The major nodded slowly. Fair enough. We launch in 4 hours. Outside, it wasn't until they pulled up to her apartment that he spoke. You just handed Murdoch everything he needed to bury you. I know. Was it worth it? Reese thought about Quinn Reeves, 25 years old, alone in enemy territory, waiting for a rescue that might never come. Thought about all the operators who died because someone in a safe office decided operational security was more important than lives. Yes, she said, it was worth it. 18 hours later, Quinn Reeves was extracted successfully. The Delta team reported 0 casualties, flawless execution, and credited exceptional pre-mission intelligence for the operation's success. 6 hours after that, Reese received official notification that she was being charged under the Espionage Act with unauthorized disclosure of classified information. The formal charges arrived via courier, a thick envelope containing legal documents that spelled out her potential future in cold, bureaucratic language. Unauthorized disclosure of classified operational intelligence. Violation of non-disclosure agreements. Possible foreign contacts. The recommended sentence was 10 years in federal prison. General Clayton Murdoch's signature appeared 3 times in the document. Reese sat in her apartment, the charges spread across her coffee table, and felt strangely calm. She'd known this was coming, had known the moment she provided that intelligence to the Delta team that she was signing her own arrest warrant. The only question now was what happened next. Her phone rang. Captain Thorne. "I just heard about the charges," he said without preamble. "This is bullshit, Reese. You saved an operator's life and violated about a dozen security regulations doing it," Reese replied. "Murdoch has me dead to rights." "The hell he does. Admiral Bancroft is already making calls. We're going to fight this." "How? Everything in those charges is technically true. I did disclose classified information. I did violate my NDA. The fact that I did it to save someone's life doesn't change the legal reality." Thorne was silent for a moment. "The congressional hearing is in 28 days. Murdoch's going to use that platform to crucify you, isn't he? That's the plan. Force me to testify about the program, expose active operations, or refuse and go to prison for contempt on top of the espionage charges." Reese laughed without humor. "It's actually elegant in a horrifying way. Then we make sure you have support when you testify. Witnesses who can speak to your character, your contributions, the lives you've saved." Wade already said he'd testify, but I don't know if that's enough. "It's a start," Thorne said. "And Reese, whatever happens in that hearing, you did the right thing. Don't let Murdoch make you forget that." The next 4 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Reese wasn't allowed on Coronado, wasn't allowed to teach, wasn't allowed to do anything except wait for the congressional hearing that would determine her future. But word of what she'd done, saving Quinn Reeves with intelligence that could only come from operational experience, spread through the special operations community like wildfire. Operators she'd never met sent messages of support. Her students from Coronado submitted written statements defending her character and capability. Lieutenant Mackenzie visited twice, both times bringing updates on Quinn Reeves's recovery and messages of gratitude from her team. "She's alive because of you," Mackenzie said during the second visit. "That counts for something." "Not in a courtroom," Reese replied. "Maybe not, but it counts to us." Garrett became a constant presence, helping Reese prepare for testimony, connecting her with a military lawyer who specialized in classified programs, and simply being there when the weight of everything threatened to crush her. "You don't have to do this," Reese told him one evening as they reviewed her testimony strategy. "Supporting me could hurt your career." "My career's fine." And even if it wasn't, Garrett met her eyes. "Cole would never forgive me if I let you face this alone. Neither would I." 28 days after the charges were filed, Reese found herself on a plane to Washington, D.C. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. the following day in the Senate Armed Services Committee chamber. Garrett flew with her, as did Captain Thorne. Admiral Bancroft was already in Washington, having spent the previous week lobbying committee members behind the scenes. The night before the hearing, Reese couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her hotel room, looking out at the monuments illuminated against the night sky, and wondered if this would be her last night of freedom. A knock at the door. Garrett, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Figured you'd be awake," he said, handing her one. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee and watching the city. "I've been thinking about Cole," Garrett said finally, "about the last conversation we had before he deployed. He told me he wasn't scared of dying. He was scared of dying for nothing, of his sacrifice not mattering." "It mattered," Reese said quietly. "I know that now, because of you." Garrett turned to look at her. Tomorrow, you're going to walk into that hearing and tell the truth. Not the whole truth. You can't, and nobody expects you to. But the truth about what those programs meant, about what you sacrificed, about why it matters that we support the people who serve in the shadows. What if they don't listen? Then you make them listen. The same way you made me listen when you explained what Cole's death meant. Garrett's voice was firm. You're not just fighting for yourself tomorrow, Reese. You're fighting for every operator who served in programs that don't exist. For Quinn Reeves and Lieutenant Mackenzie and all the women still out there doing the work. For Cole and the 11 others who died in the Tenji Valley. You carry their voices into that chamber, and you make damn sure the people in power hear them. Reese felt tears sting her eyes. I'm scared, Wade. Good. That means you understand what's at stake. He stood, squeezed her shoulder. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we go to war. The Senate Armed Services Committee chamber was smaller than Reese had imagined, but no less intimidating. Rows of senators sat elevated behind a curved bench, looking down at a single table where witnesses testified. The gallery was packed with press, military observers, and interested parties. Reese sat at the witness table in a conservative suit, her hands folded in front of her. To her left sat her lawyer. Behind her, in the first row of the gallery, sat Garrett in his dress uniform, rows of ribbons across his chest. Captain Thorne sat beside him, along with Admiral Bancroft and a dozen other officers who'd flown to Washington specifically to attend this hearing. General Murdoch sat on the opposite side of the gallery, flanked by DOD lawyers. Senator Wallace Brennan, the committee chairman and a former Army colonel, gavelled the hearing to order. This hearing is called to examine oversight of classified special operations programs, with particular focus on programs involving female operators. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent decades in both uniform and politics. Our first witness is Miss Reese Callahan, who has been subpoenaed to provide testimony regarding her involvement in such programs. He looked directly at Reese. Miss Callahan, you're here under oath. Do you understand that false testimony before this committee is a criminal offense? I understand, Senator, Reese said, surprised her voice was steady. Before we begin with questions, I understand General Murdoch has requested the opportunity to provide context for the committee. General? Murdoch stood, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. He walked to a podium set up for expert witnesses, and Reese's lawyer tensed beside her. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. Murdoch's voice was calm, measured, authoritative. I'm here today to express serious concerns about Miss Callahan's credibility and motivations. He clicked a remote, and images appeared on screens around the chamber. Photos of Reese teaching at Coronado, satellite imagery of the Syrian compound where Quinn Reeves had been held, documents with classifications marked in red. Miss Callahan claims to be a former special operator, but there's no official record of her service, no documentation of her training, no verification of her background. Murdoch's voice hardened. What we do have is evidence that she disclosed classified operational intelligence regarding Syria, intelligence that, if she obtained it the way she claims, represents a massive security breach. He clicked again. More images, financial records, redacted documents, call logs. We have evidence suggesting Miss Callahan may have unauthorized contacts with foreign nationals, that she accepted payment for teaching what she claims are techniques, but which are actually classified tactics developed at taxpayer expense. Murdoch looked at the senators. She presents herself as a victim of an unjust system. I present her as a security risk seeking attention and financial gain. He paused for effect. I recommend this committee reject her testimony as unreliable and refer her case to the Department of Justice for full prosecution under the Espionage Act. She represents everything wrong with allowing uncontrolled access to classified programs. Murdoch returned to his seat, and Reese felt the temperature in the room shift. He'd just painted her as a con artist, a security threat, and a liar. Everything she said now would be filtered through that lens. Senator Brennan looked at Reese. Miss Callahan, you'll have an opportunity to respond to General Murdoch's accusations. But first, I have a direct question. Were you or were you not part of a classified special operations program involving female operators? This was it. The moment everything hinged on. Reese could deny it, which would be perjury. She could confirm it, which would expose the program. Or she could thread the needle. Senator, I was part of a program that trained personnel for specialized missions in denied areas. The program operated from 2017 to 2021. It no longer exists in its original form. And during your time in this program, did you operate in Syria? I operated in several locations that I cannot disclose without endangering current operations. But Syria specifically, yes or no? Reese took a breath. Yes, Senator, I operated in Syria. Murdoch's lawyer stood. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Callahan just admitted to unauthorized disclosure of classified deployment information. Sit down, Counselor, Senator Brennan snapped. This committee has oversight authority over classified programs. Ms. Callahan is testifying under subpoena, which provides her protection for truthful testimony. He turned back to Reese. General Murdoch claims you're seeking attention and financial gain. Is that true? No, Senator, it's not. Then why are you teaching at Coronado? Why draw attention to yourself if you're supposed to be invisible? This was the question that mattered. Reese felt the weight of every eye in the chamber. Because women are dying, Senator. Her voice was quiet but clear. The program I served in was shut down in 2021 for political and budgetary reasons. But the need for female operators didn't disappear. The military created new programs, smaller ones, with fewer resources and less training. Those women are being sent into combat zones with 1/3 the preparation I received. She leaned forward slightly. 3 months ago, a lieutenant named Sarah Hale died in Syria because she didn't know how to read urban terrain. That's a skill I could have taught her in 2 days, but I wasn't allowed to because I'm supposed to stay invisible. Because admitting I exist means admitting the program existed. So you violated your non-disclosure agreement to help these operators? Senator Brennan asked. I did what my oath required, Senator. I swore to support and defend the Constitution and protect American lives. When I learned there were operators in danger who needed knowledge I possessed, I provided it. Yes, I violated my NDA. Yes, I disclosed classified information. I did it to save lives. The lives you saved, Murdoch interjected from his seat, came at the cost of exposing operational methodologies that put other lives at risk. Reese turned to look at him directly. The only risk here, General, is to your career. You're running a classified program right now, aren't you? One even more buried than mine was. And you're terrified that if this committee investigates my program, they'll find yours. That's what this is really about. Not security, not operational integrity, your ass covering. The gallery erupted. Senator Brennan gavelled for order. Miss Callahan, that's a serious accusation, he said when the noise died down. It's the truth, Senator. General Murdoch shut down our program in 2021, told us we didn't exist, gave us new identities and no support. Then he started a new program with even less oversight. He's not protecting national security, he's protecting himself. Murdoch's face had gone red. Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous. You'll have your turn, General, Brennan said. He looked at Reese. Do you have evidence of this current program? Lieutenant Bryn Mackenzie is sitting in this gallery. She's an active member of it. Ask her. All eyes turned to Mackenzie, who stood slowly in her Navy uniform. Senator Brennan gestured her forward. Lieutenant, please approach. Mackenzie walked to the witness table, was sworn in, and sat beside Reese. Lieutenant, are you currently serving in a classified special operations program? Brennan asked. Mackenzie looked at Murdoch, then back at the senator. Yes, Senator, I am. And does this program involve female operators in denied areas? Yes, Senator. How many operators? 6 active, Senator. We lost one 3 months ago. What kind of training do you receive? Mackenzie's voice was steady, but Reese could hear the strain. 6 weeks of basic instruction, followed by mission-specific preparation. Approximately one-third the training timeline of the previous program. And in your professional opinion, is that adequate? No, Senator, it's not. That's why I contacted Miss Callahan. We needed the training she could provide, training that officially doesn't exist anymore. Senator Brennan sat back, processing this. Then he looked at Murdoch. General, it seems Miss Callahan's accusations have merit. You shut down one program and started another with less oversight and less training? Murdoch stood. Mr. Chairman, both programs are classified above this committee's clearance level. The hell they are, Brennan interrupted. This committee has oversight authority over all DoD Special Operations programs. If you're running a program without proper oversight, General, that's a serious violation. The hearing continued for another 3 hours, but the momentum had shifted. Senator after senator questioned Murdoch about the current program, about why the previous program had been shut down, about the lack of support for operators like Reese. Admiral Bancroft testified about Reese's contributions to SEAL training. Captain Thorne spoke about her professionalism and capability. 47 operators submitted written testimony supporting her. And then Wade Garrett was called to testify. He walked to the witness table in his dress whites, 40 years of service represented in the ribbons across his chest. He was sworn in and sat with the bearing of a man who'd spent decades under pressure, far worse than a congressional hearing. Master Chief Garrett, Senator Brennan said, you submitted a request to testify on Miss Callahan's behalf. Why? Garrett pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Because she trained my son, Senator, Staff Sergeant Cole Garrett, Army. He was killed 4 years ago in Helmand Province during a classified operation. He opened the envelope, removed a letter in a clear protective sleeve, and held it up. Before he died, Cole sent me this letter. I had it declassified specifically for this hearing. His voice was steady, but emotion bled through. With your permission, Senator, I'd like to read part of it. Proceed. Garrett cleared his throat and began to read. Dad, I can't tell you where I am or what we're doing, but I can tell you about my instructor. We call her Ghost. She's teaching us things I didn't think were possible. Yesterday I made a shot at 1,400 meters in 40-mile-per-hour wind. Ghost said I did it because I trusted the training, not the conditions. She's making us better than we thought we could be. If something happens to me out here, know that I was ready because of her. Garrett's voice broke slightly. He paused, composed himself, continued. She told us that the hardest shot isn't the one you make under fire. It's the one you make knowing someone else is counting on you to be perfect. That if you miss, they die. She said that's the weight we carry as operators. But she also said we don't carry it alone. That every operator who came before us, everyone who'll come after, we're all connected by that weight. We hold each other up. Love you, Dad. Cole. Garrett set the letter down. That woman sitting there gave my son the skills that let him die a hero. He held a position for 11 minutes under fire so her team could complete their mission. That mission prevented an attack that would have killed 300 Americans. He looked at Murdoch. And when my son died, nobody told me what happened. Nobody told me what it meant. I spent 4 years thinking he died for nothing, when really he died for everything. His gaze shifted to Reese. She gave me that back, gave me my son's legacy. Garrett stood. You want to know if she's a security risk? She's the exact opposite. She's the kind of operator who puts mission and team above self, even when it costs her everything. Cole died protecting her. She spent 4 years protecting his memory and training the next generation to be better than we were. He looked directly at Senator Brennan. If you prosecute her, you tell every operator in the shadows that their service doesn't matter, that when they come home, we'll abandon them. Is that really the message this committee wants to send? Garrett sat down. The chamber was absolutely silent. Senator Brennan looked at Murdoch. "General, do you have a response?" Murdoch stood, but for the first time, he looked uncertain. "Mr. Chairman, the law is clear. Ms. Callahan violated her non-disclosure agreement. She disclosed classified information. Regardless of her motivations are precisely the point," Senator Brennan interrupted. "This committee exists to provide oversight, General, to ensure that our special operations programs serve the national interest while protecting the people who execute them. From what I've heard today, your programs have failed on both counts." He shuffled papers. "The committee will recess to deliberate. We'll reconvene in 2 hours with our findings." 2 hours felt like 2 years. Reese sat in a waiting room with Garrett, Thorne, and her lawyer, unable to eat or drink or do anything except wait. "Whatever happens," Garrett said, "you told the truth. That counts." "Does it?" Reese asked. "Murdoch's right about the law. I did violate my NDA. I did disclose classified information." "To save lives," Thorne said. "That has to count for something." The 2 hours passed. They were called back to the chamber. Senator Brennan gavelled the hearing back to order. His expression was unreadable. "This committee has deliberated regarding the charges against Miss Reese Callahan and the broader issues raised by today's testimony." He paused. "We find as follows." Reese held her breath. "First, regarding the Espionage Act charges. The committee finds that Miss Callahan's disclosure of operational intelligence was made in good faith to preserve American lives during an active rescue operation. While the disclosure violated her non-disclosure agreement, it does not meet the standard for espionage, which requires intent to harm the United States or aid a foreign power. We recommend all charges be dismissed." Relief flooded through Reese, but Brennan wasn't finished. "Second, regarding the classified programs, this committee finds that the 2021 shutdown of the female operator program was premature and politically motivated. We further find that the current program, run without adequate congressional oversight, represents a failure of accountability." He looked directly at Murdoch. "General, you're hereby ordered to provide this committee with full documentation of your current program within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in contempt charges." Murdoch's jaw was clenched so tight, Reese thought she could hear his teeth grinding. "Third and finally, regarding future policy, this committee recommends the Department of Defense establish a formal training pipeline for female special operators, properly resourced and openly acknowledged. We further recommend this program be modeled on the methods and curriculum developed by Ms. Callahan." Senator Brennan looked at Reese. "Ms. Callahan, your service to this country has been exemplary, even when this country failed to serve you in return. This committee apologizes for that failure and recommends you be offered the position of senior advisor to the new program. The decision is yours." He gavelled once. "This hearing is adjourned." The gallery erupted in conversation. Murdoch stood and walked out without looking at anyone. Admiral Bancroft pushed through the crowd to shake Reese's hand. Captain Thorne was grinning, but it was Garrett who pulled Reese into a fierce hug. "You did it," he said. "Cole would be so damn proud." Reese couldn't speak, could only hold on to this man who'd become family, who'd stood beside her when standing beside her meant risk. 6 months later, Reese stood at Lane 7 at Coronado, watching the sun rise over the Pacific. It was the anniversary of the day she'd first walked onto this range. 1 year since she'd been just a ghost trying to feel close to something she'd lost. So much had changed. The investigation into her clearance had been closed within a week of the congressional hearing. Her contractor status was reinstated, then upgraded to senior advisor. The Defense Department had formally established the National Female Special Operator Training Center at Fort Bragg, with Reese as founding director. But she'd negotiated to keep Coronado as a satellite training location. This range, this place, it was where she'd found her way back. Lieutenant Mackenzie was now her deputy director. Quinn Reeves, the operator Reese's intelligence had saved, was an instructor. Together, they'd built a training pipeline that gave female operators the preparation they deserved. 43 women had completed the program so far. 43 operators who would deploy with the skills to survive, to excel, to come home. Garrett had retired 2 months ago after 40 years of service. His retirement ceremony had been packed. Hundreds of SEALs, past and present, coming to honor a warrior who'd given everything to the teams. Reese had spoken at the ceremony, presenting him with a shadow box containing Cole's Ranger tab and a photo of father and son together. Master Chief Garrett lost his son to a mission I led, she told the crowd. He could have hated me. Instead, he became my fiercest advocate, my closest friend, and the reason I found my way home. Now Garrett appeared beside her at Lane 7, carrying 2 cups of coffee, a ritual they'd maintained through all the chaos of the past year. 1 year, he said, handing her a cup. From ghost to institution builder, not bad. Reese smiled. Couldn't have done it without you. Sure you could have. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. Garrett sipped his coffee. But I'm glad I was here for it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the ocean, until movement caught Reese's attention. A young SEAL, maybe 23, fresh-faced and nervous, was setting up at Lane 12. Reese recognized the signs immediately. The way he gripped his rifle just a fraction too tight, the tension in his shoulders. He was fighting the weapon instead of working with it. She caught his eye, gestured to the rifle. May I? The young SEAL's eyes widened when he recognized her. Ma'am, I'm good. I don't want to bother. You're not bothering me, Reese said. Show me your stance. 10 minutes later, the SEAL was shooting groups half the size of his previous attempts. His confidence transformed. How did you do that? He asked, amazed. Someone taught me once, Reese said. Now I'm teaching you. That's how it works. The SEAL nodded, gratitude clear in his face. Thank you, ma'am. Seriously. As he returned to his lane, Garrett chuckled. Some things never change. No, Reese agreed, watching the young operator practice what she'd taught him. But some things do. A year ago, I was hiding what I knew. Now I get to share it. Her phone buzzed. A message from the Pentagon. Another group of female operators requesting advanced training. Another opportunity to pass on knowledge that had been buried too long. Reese looked at the message, then at Garrett, then at the range full of warriors training to be their best. You know what the hardest part was? She said quietly. All those years of being told I didn't exist, that what I'd done didn't matter, that the skills I'd earned through blood and sacrifice were something to hide. And now? Garrett asked. Now I know it mattered. All of it. Cole's sacrifice, the missions we ran, the knowledge we gained. She gestured to the range. Every operator I train, every technique I share, that's the program living on. That's our service, meaning something beyond classified files. Garrett raised his coffee cup. To the ghosts who became legends. Reese clinked her cup against his. To the warriors who held the line so we could come home. They drank, and Reese felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years settle into her bones. Not just purpose, though she had that. Not just belonging, though she'd found that too. Peace. She was no longer a ghost. She was no longer erased. She was Reese Callahan, former operator, current instructor, and the foundation upon which the next generation would build. Her legacy wasn't written in classified files that nobody would read. It was written in the warriors who carried her lessons forward into battles she would never see. In the female operators who would deploy with proper training. In the lives saved by knowledge that had almost died with her in the shadows. A courier arrived at the range entrance, carrying an official envelope with the DoD seal. Reese signed for it, opened it, already knowing what it would contain. The letter was brief. Miss Callahan, the Secretary of Defense requests your presence at the Pentagon on March 15th for the official inauguration of the National Female Special Operator Training Center. Your leadership has transformed how we prepare our most elite warriors. On behalf of a grateful nation, Thank you for your service, past, present, and future. Below the typed text, someone had added a handwritten note. They wanted to give you a medal, but we figured you'd prefer results. Keep building, Admiral Bancroft. Reese smiled and tucked the letter into her pocket. Bancroft knew her well. Medals were for people who needed validation from others. She had something better. Students who lived because of what she taught them. Operators who excelled because of her methods. And a program that would outlast them all. Good news? Garrett asked. The best kind. They want to make it official. The training center, the curriculum, all of it. Congratulations, you've earned it. Reese looked out at the range one more time. At Lane 7, where it had all started. At the targets downrange that had witnessed her transformation from hiding to teaching. At the students practicing techniques she'd refined through years in the shadows. She thought about Cole Garrett and the 11 others who died in the Tangi Valley. About Lieutenant Sarah Hale, killed in Syria before Reese could teach her what she needed to survive. About all the operators, past and future, who deserved better than secrets and silence. We've earned it, Reese corrected. All of us. Every operator who served in programs that didn't exist. Every warrior who died in missions nobody will acknowledge. This isn't my victory, Wade. It's theirs. Garrett's eyes were bright. Cole would love that you said that. Cole made it possible. So did you. A group of female operators, Lieutenant Mackenzie's team, arrived for morning training. They waved to Reese as they headed to their assigned lanes. Quinn Reeves among them, alive and thriving because of intelligence Reese had risked everything to provide. You ready to teach? Garrett asked. Reese picked up her rifle, the familiar weight settling into her hands like coming home. Always, she said, and she walked toward Lane 7, toward her students, toward the future she'd fought so hard to build. The sun broke fully over the horizon, burning away the last of the morning fog, illuminating Coronado in golden light. Reese Callahan was no longer a ghost. She was a legacy, and she was just getting started.